Yeah. Yeah. Good morning, participants. Uh, Once again, I welcome you all for the third day of faculty development program. Today we have another wonderful resource person, Dr. Dharmesh Singh, Associate Professor from IIT Bombay. He's done a lot of work in the areas of bituminous and concrete pyramids. So now I request my colleague, Mr. Chaitanya, to introduce Dr. Dharmesh Singh.
Good morning, participant. Myself, G. Chaitanya, Assistant Professor in Department of Civil Engineering, RGKT RK Valley. I am here to give a brief introduction on Dr. Dharmir Singh. So, Dr. Dharmir Singh is an Associate Professor at Department of Civil Engineering in Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Bombay. Dr. Singh did his Master of Technology and Transportation Engineering from IIT Kharagpur, and he obtained his PhD degree in Civil Engineering from University of Oklahoma, USA. Dr. Singh research areas include rheological characterization of bitumen, mix design, performance, and durability of bituminous mixes, recycling of mixes, application of stabilized layers in payments, forensic investigation of payments, identifying additives and materials. Apart from this, Dr. Singh presented his research findings in many international conferences in China, Hong Kong, USA, Germany, Greece, Sri Lanka, and India. He has also been invited by many private and government agencies and institutions for delivering lecture on specific topics and training of engineers. Dr. Singh has published over 100 papers in international journals and conferences. And Dr. Singh has conferred with IRC Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru Birth Centenary Award 2018 by Indian Roads Congress and Bihar PWD Medal for Best Papers on Road Research Work, Indian Roads Congress, Nagpur session 2018. He is an active reviewer of many reputed international journals such as ASCE, ASTM, IJPE, RMPD, Elsevier, and Springer. Dr. Singh is closely associated with several professional organizations such as Life Member of Indian Roads Congress, Institute of Urban Transport, India, ASC and ASTM. He has been awarded as the best reviewer for ASC Journal of Performance of Constructed Facilities. Dr. Singh is an associate editor of Innovative Infrastructure Solutions, Springer, publisher and editorial board member of International Journal of Payment Research and Technology and International Journal of Road Materials and Payment Design. We are happy to have you here, sir. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Dharmesh Singh, please.
Yeah, Dr. Amar.
Yeah, please continue.
So I'm going to share the screen, right?
Yes, yes. Please install your video.
There is a echo from your side, it seems. Yeah. Dr. Amar, can you see?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Please go ahead.
and I hope all the participants can hear me.
I think yes.
Okay. And we have muted everybody, and then things should go fine.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Okay.
We listen to everybody. No problem.
Okay. So, very good morning to all of you. And Dr. Amar, we have 1 hour, right? Okay. So, very good morning to all of you. We are going to talk about the design and construction aspects of dowel bars for concrete payments. You know about the design of the that. In today's presentation, you may find some of the things which might motivate you to rethink about the dowel bars and the role of the dowel bars, how important the dowel bars are, and what are the level of information that you require for the design of the dowel bar and also for the construction of the dowel bars. So a lot of details are going to come gradually. But before I go to this presentation, I would sincerely like to acknowledge many of the researchers experts, those who have published very interesting papers on this particular topic. In fact, all the teachers and all the friends, colleagues, those who like teach every day about different kind of things. And my friend, Mr. Praveen Surve, who has really helped me to understand the topics related to concrete payments. Professor Neeraj Buch, and I was fortunate to attend this GAN course in IIT Madras. And of course, my students, those who are here, some of them might be attending, and they are the inspiration and they are the motivation to do something good. And of course, last but not the least, Dr. Amar, who has provided me this opportunity, and thank you to Rajiv Gandhi University of Knowledge Technologies, RK Valley, for giving this platform to talk about some kind of technical things. Now, many of the things in this presentation has been taken from the open resources. The purpose of taking the slides or maybe taking some kind of information, it's merely for the educational purpose. In fact, references has been given, but sometimes quite possible the references might be missed. So I apologize for that in advance. Now let's talk about the cross section of the concrete pavement. If you see this this particular cross section, there is a subgrade, there is a GSB layer, there is a DLC and PQC. In this particular lecture, we are not going to talk about how to design the concrete pavement. We are talking about the dowel bars. In fact, we are also not going to touch upon the tie bars. So I will keep my focus only on the dowel bars. Now, if you see this particular configuration, this is 2-lane highways, and there is a tight shoulder. If you see where are the dowel bars, definitely this is the traffic direction. These are the dowel bars. On all contraction joints or transfer joint, you have the dowel bars. We design the dowel bar, we provide the dowel bar. Why do we do that? And how it is going to impact the performance. That's what we're going to learn. Now, if you see the typical layout of the concrete pavement, let's say, for example, in this case, there is a 2-lane highways. Direction of traffic is given to you. And if you see the dowel bar here, this panel number 1, this is panel number 2, for example. You can see the dowel bars on all the contraction joints. And we have also given the details about the dowel bars. Now, if you see here, the dowel bar, we have 32 mm. Length is also given, spacing is also given to you. This is the typical drawing. Like for any structural drawing, we have to provide the drawing. This is the typical drawing. Now, in this photograph, you notice there is something color change actually here. There is a brown color, there is a little bit kind of blackish color. What is that? And what is the importance of that? In fact, color doesn't have any meaning here, but there is some other things which we are going to talk about. Just keep that in mind actually, what we are going to link later on in this presentation. Now, if you talk about the definition as per our Indian standards or guidelines that we have, IRC 58/2015, definitely the load transfer is required from panel to panel. You require some kind of mechanical connection. Now, the mechanical connection can be there with aggregate interlocks, or you may have this kind of steels, mild steels. That's what we are going to talk about. Now, you have the dowel bar at the contraction joints. What are the other locations that you have the dowel bars? Can you think about that? What are the other locations that we have the dowel bars? If you go into the design components of the pavement, rigid pavements, you are going to see we require the dowel bars at contraction joint, expansion joint, and construction joints. Are we going to design it differently? Yes, there are little bit change into the design. We are going to talk about that. Why do we need to provide the dowel bars at the construction joints? We understand the dowel bar we see on the contraction joint, expansion joint we also see, but why do we need to provide at the construction joints? We are going to talk about that later in this particular presentation. Now, if you go through the literature, in fact, earlier we have seen a lot of dowel bars are there in the panel. But if you go through the literature, in fact, if you see IRC 58/2015 also, there is a statement, more dowel bars may be provided under the wheel path of heavy commercial vehicles. What does it mean? Why this statement has been given? In some country, there is a practice to provide more dowel bars on the wheel path. If you see here, if I assume this is my wheel path here, I'm going to provide more dowel bars on the wheel path. I'm not going to provide any dowel bars in between. There's the one particular techniques. Other techniques can be there where you have the equal spacing of all the dowel bars, or you may have the different spacings also of the dowel bars. So what we understood, dowel bars definitely required, but do we need to really provide only on the wheel path or everywhere? Or do we need to change the spacings and everything? Now, if you see in India, the practice is we are not following the practice of providing only on the wheel path. We are providing everywhere. And also, we are not changing the spacing. We are providing the uniform spacing everywhere. But the purpose of showing this slide is so that you know this is another concept which is there in the literature. In fact, some country practice it. But in India, we don't know how the, like the wheel path is going to be, because we have a lot of wheel wonder sometimes. So that you have to keep in mind. Now,
तो हुआ हमने कमिटमेंट हुआ ये अगर स्कॉलरशिप नहीं आई कॉलेज में क्वालिफाइड फ्रेंड
I cannot hear what you are talking about.
No, Dharmveer, some disturbance. No problem, please.
Okay. Now, if you see the response of the undoweled joint or only aggregate interlock, please try to pay the attention on the wording that I'm using here. Undoweled joints or only aggregate interlock. Now, here we have only aggregate interlock. There is no dowel bar. Now, if you see the wheel load is coming here, now this particular joint is going to get deflected. Now you need to rethink about that. How long the aggregate interlock can work? Can it work a couple of years? Maybe you say 10 years, 5 years. Or other question comes, will it going to work for the heavy loading? Right? These are the typical questions that we need to think about. Now the aggregate interlock is okay. This will work for the low volumes or for lightweight. But if you don't have the proper load transfer, then you are going to see this kind of problem happens. There is a heavy stresses, high deflection, definitely your payment is going to fail. And you also going to see the mud pumping also may happen actually from these particular joints. So we understood the importance of the joints and importance of the aggregate interlocking, how we can go to the dowel joints now. Let's talk about the dowel joints. Now, if you have the dowel joints, in fact, I'm writing here plus. If you pay the attention to the plus here, the purpose of writing plus is you have the mechanical joint, which is the dowel bar, plus there is also aggregate interlock. So both the things are together, but we are relying heavily on the dowel bars because that's the kind of main purpose. This is what it is going to be at the load. Now, if you have the dowel bar, definitely there is low deflection, the low deflection, low stresses. And we are going to talk about that. What is the load transfer efficiency of a dowel bar joints? That we are going to discuss later on. Now, if you go as per IRC 58/2015, there is a statement for heavy traffic greater than 450 CVPD, dowel bars are provided at contraction joints since the aggregate interlock cannot be relied upon. That's what we saw in the last slide. You cannot trust on the aggregate interlock how it is going to work. That's how we have to be more conservative to provide the dowel bar. Now let's see further. If you go to the literature, there is a lot of finite element analysis, FEM analysis has been done into the literature. This is your non-dowel joint. This is your dowel joints. And you can see the deflection here. And you can see the deflection in this particular. So this is again to support the hypothesis that dowel bar helps to reduce the deflection. They really helps to provide the better performance of the payments, just to support that particular hypothesis or understanding. Now, again, if you do further, like going to the modelings and FEM and all, you're also going to see the non-dowel joints, the maximum stress at bottom, maybe this much. And if it is dowel joints, you're going to see the less magnitude of the stress. But bear in mind, this may be for particular conditions. If you change the wheel load, if you change some certain conditions, definitely the stresses are going to be different. But you may find a similar trend. That's what we are going to talk about. Now, the joint faulting, if at any particular joint, for example, these are the longitudinal, these transfer joints here, you see there is a difference in the elevation between these two slabs. This is called joint faulting. Now, this is a functional failure. Your slab may be okay. This is structurally, it is very, very good. It may sustain maybe like next 20, 25 years. But functionally, this is not going to work because this may result in very high IRI value. The riding quality get impacted heavily. Now, what are the reasons behind that? And what is the mechanism of this? Or regions and mechanism has to be understood. Why this slab is going down, why this slab remains here. So there is something going on in the load transfer from one slab to other slab. Now there can be different reasons for that. Maybe the dowel bar was not designed properly. Maybe there is a corrosion in the dowel bars. Maybe there is an inappropriate size of the dowel bar, or heavy traffic is there, or sometimes there might be some localized issue beneath the particular panel. Maybe your base has some problem. Quite possible. So this is the importance of having the sound joint with the dowel bar. Now let's see this very interesting graph. Faulting is given on the x-axis. Cumulative percentage of sections. It means how many sections are going to pass within that particular range. Try to understand it. I will just spend maybe little time on this. Now, this is our limiting values. If my faulting is less than 2 mm, I'm going to accept it. I say it is fine. There is no problem. But definitely if the faulting goes more than 4 mm, and you know what is the faulting, the difference in the elevation between two slabs. Now, if you see the dowel joints, non-dowel joints, there's the blue line here, there's the red line here. Let's talk about 2 mm faulting. At 2 mm faulting, you are going to see almost 90% joints are going to satisfy less than 2 mm. This is the cumulative graph. How about the dowel joint, non-dowel joints? We are going to see around 60%. Likewise, there is a very interesting observation here that I just wanted to tell you. Between 2 to 4 here. Let's say, for example, if I assume this value is around 85, this value is around 60, so this is around 25%. 25% joints are between 2 to 4 mm faulting if the joints are non-doweled. How about the dowel? Dowel, if you see 90 here, and if I assume this is close to maybe let's say 96, hardly 6% joints. Likewise, you can see other combinations also. So we understood that importance of the dowel bar is definitely cannot be ignored. We have to provide the good dowel bars. This is how it works. But how about the diameter of the dowel bars? Now, this is another very interesting observation. Again, faulting is they have taken limit of 2.5 mm. This is the known dowel joints. This is the number of trucks per day. And if you see known dowel joint, the faulting keep on increasing with the time. But when you have the dowel joints with 25 mm dowel bars, 32 mm dowel bars, 38 mm dowel bars, definitely we see the faulting is reducing with the time. I mean, it's definitely increasing, but there is a not significant change with the time. Now, if you talk about the quality of the steel for the dowel bar, what kind of steel is that? And if you see IRC 15/2017, it says very clearly, mild steel grade 1. It's not grade 2, it is grade 1 mild steel. Now let's dig down into this particular IS standard. If you go to this particular IS standard, IS 432, and if I just see more than 20 mm dowel bar, it's here. I see the yield strength is around 240. Ultimate strength is 410, and elongation is 23%. So when dowel bar is to be selected, the quality check has to be done. You have to ensure that whatever steel you are procuring for the dowel bars, it has to go to the mechanical testing. You need to ensure that these quality parameters are met. And I'm not going to go into the details of how the tensile test has to be done. You can see in a lot of literature, this kind of things you can find out actually. Now, if you go to the mass per meter, if I ask you a question, I have the dowel bar of, let's say, 0.5 meter length, 38 mm diameter. What is the typical weight of the dowel bar? What is the mass of the dowel bar? If you just carry in the hand, you need to feel some weight. It should not be like half kg or 1 kg. It has to have some weight. And there is a standard for that. It's not like some dowel bars are going to weight, let's say 1 kg, other dowel bars are going to weigh 2 kg. There is a standard. And what is the standard? If you dig down into IS 1732, you are going to see these are the typical mass per meter. Now let's assume 38 mm is close to here. It means we may see the mass of that particular dowel bar that we have talked about close to maybe, let's say, 4.5 kg or something like that. That's quite heavy weight. This is how when you go to the field, you can just sense what kind of weight of the dowel bar is there. If you see the no dowel bar for thickness less than this is as per standard, because people have shown that if you provide a dowel bar lesser than 2 mm thickness, it's not very effective. Though some people are trying for the like thin this short panel concretes and all, but those dowel bars are not really this kind of range. They are hardly maybe 12 mm, 16 mm of tie bars kind of things. Now, what about the chemical composition? Because dowel bars can be different kind of material. By the way, if you go to the literature, you are going to find nowadays dowel bars of different materials. FRP dowel bars are also there, mild steel is also there, stainless steel is also there. There are different kind of dowel bars. In fact, you are also going to find different shapes of the dowel bar. Rectangular dowel bars are also there, dowel bar are also there, elliptical is also there, trapezoidal shape is also there. So there are different kind of dowel bars. So this is the chemical composition that we have to do. We have to ensure that it is meeting the chemical composition requirement. Now let's talk about, in fact, I told you that we have different kind of joints that we are providing the dowel bars. Let's talk about the dowel bars at contraction joints. Now you pay the attention here. I'm not going to discuss all the parameters. I'm going to focus only on the dowel bar here. This is the dowel bar. And you see some kind of cover on top of the dowel bar. But we see cover on one side, we don't see cover on other side. We see the tie bars also here. There is the length of the dowel bar, and we see this cover is up to certain length, this particular cover. There has to be minimum spacing between these dowel bars and tie bars. Remember that. You cannot keep on cutting this joint all the way down. You have to make sure that there is enough cover above the tie bar also, and you have to also make sure the tie bar is not resting on top of the dowel bars. There might be some performance issues. So this is how you have to design the layout first. You have to check how the layout look like. Now let's talk about the dowel bars at expansion joints. Try to pay the attention on the diagram. Now for the expansion joints, definitely we have to provide the dowel bars. If you see, there is a change in the layout. The expansion joint, we have a lot of expansion, and typical joint width can be around 20 mm or so. So you have to provide enough space to the dowel bar so that it can freely move around. But we did not do that for the contraction joint. Yes, we didn't do that because if you see the contraction joint opening, it's hardly 5 mm, or in some cases maybe 6 mm. So we don't expect that the extension is going to be in that particular range. Now, how about the dowel bar at construction joints? Now, this is interesting. The dowel bar at construction joint must be provided. Why it is so? Because we don't have any aggregate interlock at that particular point. How come we don't have the aggregate interlock? Because we have constructed this particular slab. Now we are going to come back and construct another slab here. If you see in this picture here. So this is kind of a butt joint. You can call it, this is a butt joint. There is no aggregate interlock. So dowel bar must be provided at the contraction joint. It can have the same design what you have for the contraction joint. In fact, we have the similar, the design may change, by the way, for the expansion joint, because your expansion width is more. So dowel bar design sometimes may change, and we are going to see that. Now, if you see the placement of the dowel bar in the field, now we know what is the dowel bar. If you go to the field, you are going to see in slip form paver, there is a dowel bar inserter. There is also tie bar inserter. TBI is also there. DBI you are going to see, and this is how you stock all your dowel bars. This is how you load them, and this is how it goes. And you can see slot here. This is going to push around. If you can see the mark here, these are the typical mark. So this particular slot is going to push it down. So it means we have to calibrate it first. It should not push at whatever the depth it wants. We have to calibrate this particular system. Once you calibrate that, then you are pretty sure that this particular dowel bar is going to go at that particular location. Now, a couple of things I want you to pay attention here. Just see the color difference here, and also see some kind of tape on this particular dowel bars. And when I finish this particular presentation, you must be in the position to answer this question that I'm asking right now. Now, if you go to this DBI, definitely that you have to, first of all, you need to know where are you going to fix the dowel bar, at what position, transfer joint spacings. But you know, the DBI it also can be tricky affair sometimes. You have to be very, very careful that what kind of mix you are using, what kind of vibration you are applying in the slip form paver. Because ultimately, if you think about the rheology of the fresh cement paste, you have the, now we know the typical, the mass of the dowel bar is around, let's say 5 kg. You have the 5 kg weight, which is resting on the fresh cement paste, and we are vibrating it, definitely, and then this DBI is pushing it down. But once this DBI pushes it down, it doesn't mean the dowel bar is going to be there. If you have a lot of vibration, this particular dowel bar may try to go up. So you have to be very, very careful that what kind of mixed consistency you require, what kind of vibration you require to ensure that dowel bar does not go here and there. Otherwise, you are going to see the dowel bar trails. You see there is a black line here. It means it's quite possible the dowel bar has maybe shifted on the top, slightly, like misaligned. And this may also cause the crack sometimes later on. So we are going to see that. Now, another thing, if you see in the fixed form paver or the manual construction, you are also going to see the dowel bar cradles, or we call it dowel brackets. Now, if you see here, these are the dowel brackets because you cannot have DBI everywhere. Let's say, for example, urban roads or maybe the village roads or maybe some other locations, you require these cradles to be there. Now, if these are the cradles and you have the dowel bars, you just fix them on the ground, you fix them and they are fixed on the ground, and then you pour the concrete. And now you know what is the length, depth of this particular dowel bar, what is the spacing, what is the length, all these things are given to you. This is another dowel bar cradle you are going to see. Now, this is another question for you. Are you going to approve this dowel bar cradle design? How do you check the design of the dowel bar cradle? How do you ensure that this dowel bar cradle is going to be effective, or it will not deflect when you load the concrete? If you ask me personally, I will not accept it. There are many reasons for that. The design is not appropriate. You can see there is no support below the dowel bars. So this kind of cradle is a poorly designed cradle. There are many issues in this particular cradle that you have to pay attention. In fact, I have seen not many people think about this particular cradle design. So I would encourage all the students, those who are here, think about this, read about that. What kind of design component has to be involved in this? Now, when I talk about the dowel bar design, I'm not going to teach you here how to do the dowel bar design. I'm just telling you, when I say the design the dowel bar, it means tell me the diameter of the dowel bar, spacing of the dowel bar, length of the dowel bar. These are the three things I want from you. For that, we require a lot of inputs. Now, these are the typical inputs that you require for the design of the dowel bars. First is your design load transfer efficiency, tide, whether you have the tied shoulder, untied shoulder, what is the joint type that you have, what is the material properties, concrete, like elastic modulus and all, what is the foundation support. These are the typical input parameters. And you see, dowel bar is very, very sensitive to the input parameters. If you change the LTE, everything will change. If you change the tied to untied shoulder, things will change. If you change the design load smartly, dowel bar will change. Now the question comes, if I ask you a question, this is my typical axle load spectra, and I wanted to design the dowel bar. Now you see the single axle load, tandem axle load, tridem axle load, different kind of loading here. I see the frequency. Now the question comes, what load is to be selected for the design of the dowel bars? Can I just select whatever I want? Or I can just select the standard axle, which is 80 kilonewton, and go ahead. Or I need to select 98 percentile. Remember earlier IRC 58, they used to talk about the 98 percentile. Or maybe it has to be 90 percentile, 80 percentile. Do some literature review on that. Try to think about that. But if you ask me personally, I will definitely put my vote on this particular load. The maximum single axle load based on the axle load spectra is around 190 kilonewton. So 190 kilonewton is the single axle load that I'm going to select, which is more severe as compared to your tandem and tridem. Now, if you do some, like kind of trick here, you just make it 0, 0, 0 or something, definitely you may come up with here also, your design may change. So the question is, how much I need to trust on the axial load spectra. Your design is going to be what you give the inputs. It doesn't have any emotions. You give the input, it will tell you the values. It doesn't tell you that I will fail in the future. But yes, you have to see what is the axial load spectra you are going to really see in the field. There has to be some reliability into that. Now, when I go to the design of the Dalbar, if you see the schematic of the Dalbar here, you apply the load. Gradually with the time, in fact, if you see, there is a compressive stress here. This we call it the bearing stress. Maybe let's say 1 repetition, 2 repetition, 3 repetition, 4, maybe 1,000, millions and all. What do you think with the time going to happen? You know, this particular arrangement, whatever arrangement you see, the Dalbar is going to get little bit loosened, right, with the time? Because we see this is how the compressive stress is going to work repeatedly. So there is also, you can see the cumulative this compressive, like load is coming up here. So we designed the Dalbar based on the bearing stress on the concrete. Now, what kind of load has to be taken? If you see, this is the Dalbar here, this is the deflection and all. So the design is safe when your allowable bearing stress in the concrete is more than the actual bearing stress. Very simple calculation. And if you go into the detail, this is the allowable bearing stress, this is the maximum bearing stress. You can do calculation yourself. But one thing you try to notice here, and I would recommend all, like youngsters, those who are working in this field, think about how many parameters are there. Do some kind of sensitivity analysis. Tell me the impact of this K value. Tell me the impact of this Z value. Tell me the impact of, you can see everything is clubbed together. So many parameters you're going to see. And if you add load transfer efficiency and all kind of things, this becomes another complicated things. Now, what we assume here, the load, the shear load, actually, we're talking about the shear force. The shear force, if you see, it is going to transfer up to length of L. If you see earlier standard, guidelines, IRC, it was 1.8 L. But whether 1.8 L is more conservative or 1 L is more conservative. In fact, some people say it is not even L. It is hardly 0.5 L. Or some people say it is hardly 0.4 L. If you go through the literature, you are going to find a lot of interesting things actually into the literature. So this is how the design has to be done. This is quite an interesting slide, and I want you to think about that. Some people ask me a question, how do you decide the length of the Dalbar? Diameter is okay, spacing is fine, but how do you decide the length of the Dalbar? And if you see IRC 58 here, and usually I ask this question, why the length is decreasing? Why it is increasing afterward? Now, if you go through the literature, you're going to find a lot of interesting things in this. You see the distance from the joint face. Let's say, for example, this is your joint. This is my Dalbar. I'm talking about from here, I go inside. Now, the first inflection point and second inflection point and third inflection point, it means wherever it is happening, 0. Because Dalbar is going to deform. If you see, there is a maximum deformation here on the face of the concrete. You're going to see the first inflection point, you're going to the second inflection point, and if you see the shear force here, maximum shear force, first inflection point, if you see, it comes around maybe close to 6 centimeter. If I go close to 6 centimeter, I'm going to see the maximum shear force. And if I go to the second inflection point, which is close to 20 centimeter, if I go 20 centimeter, it comes here. You can do a couple of observations from here. First of all, as we talked about, that the shear force decreases to 0 after 1.0 L. And L, let's say maybe L typically maybe around 600 mm or 700 mm. But this is quite low. This is hardly 200 mm. That's what I told you. Some people say the shear force is going to be 0 after 20 centimeter, after 30 centimeter. So this is how you have to talk. In fact, in the literature, they say you take the length up to second inflection point. And if you see the second inflection point here, which is around 20 centimeter, 200 mm, if you go other side, which is also 200 mm, 400 mm, if you take maybe, let's say, joint width is around 5 mm or 10 mm, it typically comes around 410 or 420 mm. But to consider the misalignment, the kind of construction in the field, you just be more conservative. So I would consider whatever we have given in IRC 58, it's more conservative side. So no need to cut it down further. Now, if you see the typical design of dowel bar, and there are many components here, you can see there are a lot of components. And you can do the sensitivity analysis. Anybody can set up this Excel file. This is not complicated thing. But I'm just showing you two examples here. This 32 mm diameter, 350 mm spacing, 500 mm length. This is not safe. If I increase the diameter, it's safe. But there are many other points. If you see the contraction joint, and I assume the tight shoulder, there are many other inputs that you can change. You can change the spacing also, you can change the diameter also, you can change the foundation support also, you can change the joint width also. A lot of things can be changed. And this is how your dowel bar design is going to change. And also the important thing is the load. If you change the load, everything will change. So there are a lot of link to the design of the dowel bar. I would encourage you to think about that. Now, this is another very interesting finding in the literature. You see the bearing stress that we talked about. This is the dowel bar diameter. This is the spacing of the dowel bar. This is the compressive stress or bearing stress. If I increase the dowel bar diameter, in fact, dowel bar diameter is increasing this direction. If you increase the dowel bar diameter, let's say, for example, in our case, 38 mm. So 38 mm, I'm going to put it somewhere here. And you say the spacing is 300 mm. So 300 mm is here. Now, if you go here, so what you see from here, if you decrease the dowel bar diameter, compressive stress is going to be very, very high, right? So this is how you have to think about how the compressive stress can change, or there's a function of the various parameters. Now, some people have tendency of thinking that let's provide a lot of dowel bars. I have seen in the practice, some people think that, okay, instead of 350 mm center to center, let's make it 200 mm center to center. But remember, this is a joint. This is the mechanical joint. Like you have the shoulder. Sometimes your shoulder gets stiffened, right? You cannot move it. It's kind of locked. You cannot move your shoulder. Similar thing happens to the joint also. If you really provide a lot of dowel bars, your joint is going to lock. Shear action will not happen. Deflection there is a issue is going to come up. So you have to be very, very careful that you really don't provide a lot of dowel bars. Otherwise, you are going to see there's a locking of the joints. Now, another important thing I usually talk to many people about the anti-corrosion coating. Now, you should ask question to yourself, what kind of coating are we providing in India? What is the type of the coating that we're providing? What is the thickness of the coating? How do I check it? What is the abrasion resistance of the coating? How do I check it? So all these things we have to think about. Now, this coating is very, very important. If you see IRC 58, there is a statement given. The coating is required. If you see, these are after 5 years, this is the different kind of coatings here. But if you see, there is the corrosion. What is going to happen if the dowel bar get corroded? If the dowel bar get corroded, you think about that. Definitely, it is going to eat the dowel bar diameter. The dowel bar diameter will decrease. Your strength will decrease. Your performance of the joint will decrease. So you need to really protect it. Now, I have seen sometimes in the field, the dowel bar is coated properly, but I see the patches of uncoating here and there. That's not going to work. If you have the coating of the dowel bar, it has to be consistent. Otherwise, if you leave the patches here and there, it's not going to work out. Now, this is I told you in the beginning. You notice the color, two different colors. Remember in the layout, I told you that there is a brown color, like the black, kind of blackish color. If you see the dowel bar, there is a seating. Now, if you see here, this is the dowel bar, this is the seating here. There is a plastic cover, which is around 0.5 mm thickness, not more than that, and which has to cover around 60% length of the dowel bar. So you can see this around 60% length of the dowel bar for the contraction joint, and for expansion joint is also given here. The purpose is so that we don't lock the joints. It has the like capacity to move around a little bit, because there is again going to be expansion and contraction on the contraction joint also. So you need to leave one particular joint, some moment has to be there. So therefore, you are not providing the seating other side. You are just providing a 60% of the length. But then the question comes, how to ensure if the seating will allow movement of the dowel bar? I mean, what is the guarantee that I put the seating and then it does not allow the movement of the dowel bar? Possible? Quite possible. If you have the dowel bar which is having the seating on top of that, and if you think it is not allowing the dowel bar to move, then it is not going to work. Now the question comes, how do I check? Do I have some kind of testing to do? Yes, we can do some interesting tests. If you go to the literature, there is a pull-out test. This is you have to cast a beam, you have the dowel bar, you have the seating here, you apply the tensile force, and if you see IRC 15, 2017, very clearly statement is written here. A 7-day tensile load shall be applied here, and the moment has 2.25. We have to find out what is the average bond stress in this particular situation. And this should not be more than 0.114 MPa. Now, some people get confused here. Why it should not be 0.14 MPa? It should be more. We want more bonding. But remember, we are checking the seating, the quality of the seating actually. This is not tie bar design. Tie bar design, definitely you need more bonding, more shear, like the bond stress. So if you see the testing data here, this is the kind of testing data. On an average, it is coming 0.11. So this is another parameter that you have to think. So dowel bar design is not simply you just go with this diameter, length, and spacing. There are a lot of construction issues that you have to think about. Now, another important thing I told you, that there is a tape here. Why we are applying the tape? Just I will draw a schematic diagram. This is, let's say, dowel bar here. Now, if I put the seating here. Now, if you don't apply the tape, what is going to happen? There are quite high chances that aggregate, some particles may go inside. Possible? If it happens, for example, what is going to happen? It will again not function. So what you do, you try to seal it. This is how it is. And in fact, I have seen the practice in the field. Some people don't even do that. So you have to see what are the construction practices that you have to adopt. Now, another thing comes to the load transfer efficiency. I have a couple of questions here for you. And when we go to this couple of slides, I will be asking a couple of interesting questions to think about, all for youngsters, those who are working in this field. Now, the load transfer efficiency is very, very important parameter because we design the dowel bar based on the LTE. We assume 100% load transfer efficiency for the design of the dowel bar. Now, the first question comes, what is the load transfer efficiency? How do I define that? And if you see the literature, they say the load transfer efficiency is the deflection on the unloaded slab divided by deflection on the loaded slab. Now, this is your wheel, this is your loaded slab because this is loading it, this is your unloaded slab. it will deflect. This is not deflecting here. So this is zero load transfer. If it is same deflection both sides, let's say for example 1 mm and 1 mm both sides, I will say that the LT is 100%. So let's think about that. Now, how to measure the deflection? Now, for the deflection measurement, we use polymer deflectometer. If you see here, this is the polymer deflectometer, this is the joint here, and you can use polymer deflectometer for measuring the deflection. I'm not going to enter the detail of that. But deflection is also a function of dowel bar, the joint width, the foundation stiffness, the temperatures. But just I'm telling the how to determine the LT of a joint. Now remember I told you that after some repetition, your dowel bar will lose a little bit. Now this is another interesting study. The looseness of the dowel bar and load transfer efficiency. And then K, this is the capital K, which is the modulus of dowel support. This is the maximum K here, which is 600 MPa per mm. Hello. So if you see the looseness of the dowel bar, and if you see the LT is decreasing, that makes sense to us. So this is also in fact supports our hypothesis that why we are talking about the dowel bar supports, why we are talking about the LT and all. Now there are a lot of factors which can influence the load transfer efficiency. So don't think the load transfer efficiency is only about the dowel bars. If you have that conception, that's wrong. Don't think the load transfer efficiency is only about the dowel bar design. It is only about the spacing, length, and the diameter of the dowel bar. No, it is also function of other parameters. You have designed perfectly fine. Everything has been taken nicely, but there are many other factors which can also have the impact. You may have the improper placement of the dowel bar. You may have the poor base. The subgrade is a problem. Climate is a factor. I'm talking about the climate. What do you mean? Why I'm talking about the climate here? We're going to discuss it. So there are many factors that we have to think about. Now, this is a question for you. I want to find out load transfer efficiency. In the daytime, you know, slab goes curl up. In the nighttime, this is the curl down. If I ask you a question here, if I do the load transfer efficiency of this particular slab and this particular slab, which one will give the more LT to me? Think for a second. Possible? You are going to the field with, let's say maybe, for example, with polymer deflectometer, you do the measurement of deflections, and you see this kind of situation sometimes in the daytime, nighttime. This situation you do LT. Which one is going to have more LT? Now, if you notice here, in this particular situation, your joints are going to lock. In fact, they are tightening up a little bit. So quite possible you may see the less deflection. But here your joints are opening up. It's like trying to open up. So you may see the more deflection. Now you may ask question, then when do I need to measure the LT? Is there any time that I need to measure the load transfer efficiency of a joints? Typically in the literature, you are going to find that the temperature around 20 to 25 or 23 degrees Celsius is okay. You may ensure that it is going to be like reliable LT. So this is another climate factor that I was talking to you. Now another question for you. I have 4 cases with me. Case number 1, case number 2, case number 3, case number 4. Deflection at the loaded slab is 0.04. Unloaded slab is given. I know how to calculate LT. What is LT? Deflection at, this is I think unloaded slab, and this is loaded slab. How to calculate LT? You know, 0.04 divided by this. Can you tell me which joint is fine? Which joint do you think is going to be excellent joint out of these 4 joints? Okay, I see 80%, looks good. I see 83, looks excellent. I see 80, absolutely okay. This joint looks problematic to me because LT is very less. Do you think it is good? Because we are finding the load transfer efficiency, but there is a problem here. Now, LT is very, very deceptive term. It is a ratio. You are finding a ratio, but ratio can be anything. The ratio 4 divided by 5 is also 80. Ratio 0.04 divided by 0.05 is also 80. But if you see the real deflection, it is quite less in case number 1 as compared to case number 2. So what it tells me that ratio is not going to work. I'm not getting the right sense from here. So in some of the literature, you are going to find the relative deflection. What is relative deflection? The difference between these two. If it is below 0.025, good, joint is good. Let's see how it's going to work. If you see the relative deflection in our first case, 0.01, third case, 0.01, it means this is good, this is good, this is not good, this is not good. So now you realize that there is something else going on. It's not simply ratio, the way we are talking about the LT. It is about the performance of the payment, which also depends upon the deflection. Numbers are okay. Number you may say 80, 100%, but the deflection, how much deflection is happening? By the way, in the literature, you are also going to find another interesting theory. This is based on the differential energy. What is differential energy? This is how the differential energy has to be calculated. If you simplify this, like this a square minus b square in your elementary school that you might have done, a plus b and a minus b. So a minus b is here. This is what we are talking about, a minus b. But you can also calculate the differential energy. If the differential energy is more, LT is less, faulting is more. So think about this particular parameter. Now the last topic that we are going to talk, we are going to finish maybe 5 to 7 minutes. Alignment of the Dalbar. I want you to think about that. Just pay attention, I'm just going to explain it. These are the Dalbar. I'm talking about the longitudinal translation. What does it mean? It means the Dalbar may shift here and there. Longitudinally, it may shift, right? Possible, it may shift. Horizontal translation, it means the spacing may change. You have provided, let's say, 300 mm spacing, but spacing is not 300, spacing is 400 mm. Or you say Dalbar is center to center here, I assume 250, 250, but in my case, I'm getting 300 this side, 200 this side. So longitudinal translation, horizontal translation, horizontal misalignment. You have provided the Dalbar very straight, but in some of the joint you may find it has rotated. We call it horizontal misalignment. Or some literature you are also going to find the rotation or tilt also you are going to find. In the bottom you are going to see vertical translation. It means the shift. Remember, we are providing the Dalbar at the mid depth, but it may shift. Sometimes that's what we discuss. In the DBI also it may happen. In the cradle also it may happen if you are not designing it properly. So this kind of shift may be there. So this is the thickness of the slab. It may also tilt vertically. You have a Dalbar, but it will tilt. This is tilting horizontal. It may be anti-clockwise, clockwise. It may be down. It may be up. It may be up. It may be down. This may be this side. This may be this side. Anything is possible. But why we are talking about the Dalbar alignment? Do we really need to care about that? If you say yes, how do I check it? So that's what we are going to talk about. And do we have any specs in India for considering the alignment of the Dalbar? We are going to talk about that later. Now, if you follow the literature, what happens if you have the misalignment of the Dalbar? What happens in reality? Why do I need to care about that? Now, if you see, this is the horizontal translation, this is the longitudinal translation, the traffic is this direction. And if you see the horizontal skew, this is the tilt that I told you, horizontal tilt, this is the vertical translation, it is the depth of the slab, there's the vertical tilt. Just remember this term that I'm using here. And if you see the impact of this kind of misalignments, the horizontal skew, which is here, it may cause spalling, cracking, load transfer also it may impact. If you have the vertical tilt, again, you may have the impact of this. If you have the vertical translation, you may have the impact. And in fact, if you see carefully, the load transfer efficiency is going to change. Whatever happens, once it changes, now you know how the load transfer efficiency has to be calculated, what impact it has onto the design, what impact it has onto the performance of the pavement, on the joint locking. So faulting, deformation, deflection, stresses, cracking, a lot of things may come up. Now let's talk about what happens. Now these are the pictures, some of the pictures of lock joints. Now, as per IRC 15 2017, there are some standard tolerance is given to you. Now, what is the tolerance? Let's again pay attention to the drawings that we have. Horizontal skew, it means this is horizontal plane, it may shift this side, it may shift this side also from here. Less than equals to 10 mm. I'm going to accept it. If it is less than equals to 10 mm. Vertical is going, it can be up, it can be down, 10 mm, right? If you see the longitudinal translation, it may shift here and there. The misalignment, we sometimes we are assuming 500 mm. Remember the length discussion that we had. And I told you that we are on the conservative side. The reason is in the field, sometimes you may have the misalignment in the horizontal direction. Maybe one side you have 300 mm, other side you have 200 mm, possible. So that kind of tolerance is around less than 50 mm. Depth wise, you are putting your dowel bar here, it can be plus minus 25 mm. Now, if you read IRC 15 2017 carefully, it is written, if more than half of the dowel bar at a joint don't meet any of the acceptance criteria that we have discussed, then the joints will be treated as a locked joint and it has to be rejected. I have not seen so far actually if the joint has been rejected in the field, because people say that DBI is going to give the accurate things. But yes, I mean, as per the protocol, as per the standard, as per these guidelines, it has to be checked. If it is so, the DBI is so accurate, then we should have not given this requirement. So definitely we have to think about that what kind of alignment we are getting into the field. And if the joint is locked, you have to do the full depth repair. Again, you have to do the reconstruction of that particular joint. But there is some frequency of that. Maybe if you check one joint fails, it doesn't mean that you just take out all the joints. There is some other way of looking into that also. But the joint is altogether another topic that you can take out. Now let's see the practice of some of the states in US. What do they think about the tolerance? Maximum rotation. What is the rotation? Rotation means this. These are the rotations. Vertical translation, it means depth-wise. Longitudinal, it means shift here and there. If you see, we have requirement of less than 10 mm, but I see typically almost same requirement, around 6 mm, 6 mm, 14 mm. So we are fine. I think we are, as far as the specification is concerned, we are okay actually with that. Vertical translation, about the depth, up and down, we have plus minus 25 mm. I think also we are fine. And some literature, they say 1/10 of the slab thickness. Longitudinal translation also there. So as far as specs are concerned, we are fine. But the point here is how to measure the alignment of the dowel bar after pavement is constructed. That is a major question. Tolerance we can fit in, but how do I measure that? For that, if you again go to the IRC 15 2017, there is another procedure given, magnet pulse induction, MPI. You can also refer ASTM standard. There is a frequency is also given in IRC 15. Checking frequency more than 25% of the joints. It is given. It means it has to be checked. But sometimes this particular device is not available. Now I have the video, but you can also see on the YouTube. I will not play it here because the time is running out. So this is how the device look like, but I will show you some interesting finding from this. This is the interesting finding for this particular device. Now you see here, this is your dowel bars, number of dowel bars, you can scan it. And if you see the depth here, we have plus minus 25 mm tolerance. So let's say, for example, this is 310 mm, mid depth is 150 mm. So I have the tolerance within this range. I see everything is fitting well, but these two dowel bars are not fitting well. It means it is around 202, 204. 204, yes. I see the rotation, less than 10 mm. I think everything is okay, everything is satisfying. And sometimes you see plus and minus sign right here. That depends upon whether it is, like up and down, clockwise, anti-clockwise. It depends upon what kind of sign convention that you want to adopt. And this is, you can calculate the spacing of the dowel bars. So this is how important this particular instrument is, just to check the dowel bar alignment into the field. And then you can think about the load transfer efficiency, and then you can link it. That how does it really make sense to you? But as I told you, sometimes this particular device is not available. Now, if it is not available, I have also seen people doing this kind of practice. They just try to expose the concrete in 1 meter of width and try to see how the dowel bars look like. But this is, again, I mean, this is not very handy procedures for doing it, but yes, this is the practice that we follow it. With this particular slide, I just conclude my presentation. I think I have taken almost 5 to 7 minutes more, and I hope you could get some interesting finding from this. Dr. Amar.
Yeah, yes, actually very interesting presentation. So I will talk to you maybe personally. Like I'm also working in this area, like mainly on misalignment of dowel bars. I'll talk to you personally.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Participants, if you have any questions, you may please put it in chat box so that Dharm will answer.
Yes, I have.
Hello?
Yeah. Dharm, there is a question at 10:48. In contraction times, do we need seating on the dowel bar?
So, can you see my screen number or no?
No, not now.
Acha. Okay, fine. So, what is the question? Tell me again. Yeah.
In contraction joints, do we need to provide seating on the dowel bars?
Yes, of course. Seating has to be there everywhere.
Then everywhere in all the joints.
Yes.
Yeah, another question. Sir, you mentioned design years is. Sir,
What is that?
You meant 10-9. 11-9. You just take it.
Right. 11. Okay. 11-9. 11-9. You mentioned about design years in one of the slides. Please explain what is it. I don't remember what is the question.
Also not getting it.
So maybe what Amar they can do, they can personally contact me, they can send questions and all. So that's not a problem. I'm going to the next question. Why the joints should cut in early hours of the concrete pavement? I think if you are really wondering question of this answer, then you should definitely go through the basics, because there is a very simple logic behind that. The concrete will shrink, you are going to see the issues, and then it will crack. The tensile, like the stresses will develop. So you have to really cut down as early as possible. Typically 8 to 12 hours, but sometimes it can be less than that, depending upon the weather conditions.
Then last question, you can see that will there be any effect on LTE if dowel bar is?
No. One more question is there. Can we put dowel bar in 2 layers? What do you mean by the dowel bar in 2 layers? I could not understand that. I'm not sure what do you mean by the 2 layers actually. I mean the layer, one layer above another layer? I could not understand that question.
Perhaps maybe the two-layer nowadays that concept also is becoming
No,
popular.
it means the two-layer construction, right? Payment construction.
Yeah.
Oh, possible. That's what you have to make the slots and everything has to be done actually. Yeah. Then there is a question: will there be any effect of LT if the dowel bar is eccentric embedded? Yes, I think that's what we have seen, right? We have seen in the last slide the alignment, how powerful it is. Please tell us the effect of curling on LTE. Remember in one of the slides I showed you, if it is curling up, your joints are going to be tightened up a little bit. If your joints are going to tighten up, your one slab is going to support other slab. So definitely they are not going to allow a lot of deflection. So in that case, you may find a little bit higher LTE. So that's the reason I told you that you have to be very, very careful where you are going to measure the load transfer efficiency.
Okay, Dharmveer, actually, it's a very good presentation. I also have one doubt. Suppose in your axial load spectrum, you said for the maximum V load should be taken for the design of the development.
Right.
190 kilonewtons.
Right.
In case of the single phase, in the same axial load spectrum, I have seen in case of the tandem axle, we have the both combined axial load, tandem axle load was like 400 kilonewtons. Take it on each axle, it will be approximately 200 kilonewtons.
Right.
So whether single axle to be taken or tandem axle load to be taken for the design of the double bar. That is actually practically somebody asked this question when I was designing one of the pavement.
That is very good question, Amar, actually, yeah. Because logically, if you see the load is more there also, right?
Yeah.
But I think if you go back to the theory of that how the load is getting distributed among the axles, and how the moment is going to get generated, the shear force and all. So I don't have the real clear-cut answer of that. But what I have seen in the literature that the impact of the single axle is more as compared to the tandem axle. So I would not really put a lot of weight on the tandem and tridem actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what actually some field engineers they have asked me this question.
Right.
The problem is when you have the tandem axle, there is a this
So it will be more conservative actually. In fact, if you go that way around, then in fact, what happens? Axle load spectra is also very tricky. Somebody may report, somebody may not report the high loads. So if you can catch it from the tandem and tridem, that is okay in one way, right?
Okay, let me just provide concluding remarks. Dr. Dharmveer Singh has started his presentation by explaining the purpose of providing double bars and rigid pavement and importance of spacing of double bars. This is also one of the very interesting that I have listened today, like providing the spacing. Like you can provide less spacing under the wheel path, and you can increase the spacing in the center of the nail slab. Then Dr. Singh explained the load transferring mechanism of the joints in rigid pavement due to various types of joints such as aggregate interlocking and double joints. Dr. Singh described the material requirements for double bars and relevant codal provisions. Dr. Singh beautifully demonstrated the placement of double bars by DBI and manually. Dr. Singh explained the design of double bars as per IRC specification. In that, he elaborated how to select the maximum wheel load from the axial load spectrum, influence of concrete and steel parameters, subgrade support on the double bar. Dr. Singh had also demonstrated testing requirements. That is one of the very important points. Generally, we take the double bars of a different dia, and generally nobody concentrates on this testing. Testing requirements is also important. Testing requirements before placing the